Hey, everybody, before we get into my interview with Catherine, just wanted to give, I guess now the usual heads up that in the course of my interview, I do reveal the identity of the next head of household. So if you don't want to know who the next HOH is until Sunday's episode, feel free to turn off the interview when I start getting into the word association towards the end. Otherwise, enjoy my interview with Catherine. Well, to start, I want to rewind to the beginning of this week. You're standing up on that wall, pelted with goo and water, whatever else exists under the sun. Vince looks over at you and offers to make a deal, and you choose not to, whether or not it was fueled by the certain feelings towards him after Riley's eviction, or just your persistence of wanting to win the competition. Fortunately, does not work out for you. What caused you to ultimately not make the deal, and how do you look back on that decision?
Um, Vince already had betrayed my trust more times than I can count on one hand, I think. So I knew any deal that I made with him would have essentially no merit. It would be almost the same thing as not having a deal. Yeah, I didn't fully trust or even halfway trust him to stay good on his word, and I didn't want to stay with my word either. If I told him that he would be safe with me, he more than likely wouldn't have been. So I think it was just two people that were going to lie to each other, and there didn't seem to be much of a point to make a deal because neither of us were going to follow through.
Well, to that point, then, when you find out that Vince does put you up as a renomination, how surprised were you? Because, there was a lot of back and forth. It really seemed like it was an 11th hour decision from Vince to put you up instead of Rachel.
Well, I'm glad it seemed more indecisive than it felt.
Hmm.
I definitely felt like I was the only person putting a water bottle on a forest fire, trying to be like, don't make it me, don't make it me. But it didn't turn out to be that shocking. I think it kind of hit me the night before when I noticed how much he was talking to other people in his room and how much he was kind of shutting himself off from different random people talking to him. And especially that morning, he seemed to want to cut our conversation a little quick. And I think it's because he wanted the reassurance of putting me up to feel slightly better about it because he needed that, I guess. So I don't know. I feel it wasn't too surprising when he was wanting to talk to Rachel more than he wanted to talk to me. I was like, it's gonna be me.
Well, you talk about the forest fire. Let's talk about you fanning the flames a bit. I want to rewind back to the beginning of the game. Let's talk about Showergate here, because at least from our perspective, you were the one that seemed to be the most vocal about, what Ashley may or may not have done. I can tell you that she did really only take like a 30-minute shower, apparently, and the rest was just talking to Vince. But talk to me a bit about that. Was that purposeful on your part to maybe start getting a bit of a fervor going against Ashley early on?
No, it wasn't an intentional thing at all. I definitely did think that she was in the shower pretty much that whole time, and she stuck with that because she didn't want people to be suspicious of her speaking events for so long. Um, but yeah, I it wasn't intentional. I genuinely just thought that we were all laughing and making a joke about how long it was taking for her. And I didn't think anything of it. And Jimmy was even like saying, that's the type of stuff that puts you on the block. And I was like, whoa, like, and I repeated that. And I didn't quote him directly. So I think that's how maybe it started to seem like it was me. But that's okay. I didn't really care much then, and I don't really care much now. And it didn't help because she's still there.
Uh, well, she is someone that, you certainly have some tense words for during that night where Riley's HOH gets overthrown, as you did for Rachel. We've got to talk about that because, listen, you have certainly not minced words when it comes to your thoughts about Rachel. You had talked this past week in particular about how you felt that, she was somebody that her family would not be proud of her for making this move of splitting up the showmans. You had some comments about her age. You said that you were going to make hate pages about her neck, I think. So talk to me about your thoughts on her overall. What has led you to feel this way about her?
I think honestly, I kind of realized that I wasn't really going to be friends with Rachel in the house, and that that bridge was crossed a while ago.
Hmm.
So I just kind of decided like, okay, I'm gonna have a little bit of fun with this. Like, if I'm not gonna love someone being in this house, I'm gonna really commit to not loving them being in that house. So I think that's kind of what I ran with Rachel. I didn't want to forget how she made me feel, and I think anybody that makes me sob hysterically for 3 days doesn't fully deserve my forgiveness in 3 days either. So yeah, I coped with some humorous comments, and I also coped with the fact that um, she did, send home somebody that she cried to multiple times about her husband with and leaned on for support constantly. And, her brand of being a villain is her most important part of her life.
Well, I want to talk about, obviously, when you have Lauren use the veto on Vince, this was a decision that you were very vocally against to
Right.
her. And I imagine that's complicated because obviously you two were tight. She was the vote to keep you in the game. So talk to me a bit about that. What was your reaction and sort of compartmentalization of your relationship alongside the fact that arguably she also helped contribute to Riley going home?
Um, that was really hard to deal with. But the list of people in that house that I trusted was growing slimmer and slimmer every single week. So, despite the fact that Lauren did something that I didn't want her to do, I am not her keeper, and I did try to convince her as much as I could to not do it. Um, but I did know she didn't do it with the intent of really trying to get Riley up there. So I had to forgive it because I knew that I could still at least trust her words at the end of the day. And even if I couldn't, I could trust her words more than a lot of people in the house.
So let's get into the Riley of it all because listen, I would imagine that there was a lot of unexpected coming your way, as you are to expect in Big Brother early on. I mean, Riley is telling you in the very first week, I'm going to do anything to make sure that you win this game, even over myself. Talk to me about that sort of initial reaction and the first stage of, your eventual relationship developing.
Initial reaction, I was like, okay, this is like maybe an infatuation thing. It's a crush. I really thought, he'd get over it in like a week or something if I didn't feed into it much because I was pretty cautious of wanting to be perceived as even a flirtmance, let alone a showmance with anyone in the house. Um, but he just proved to be such a great person and genuinely made like every day that I had there that was a good day was mainly attributed to him. So I just couldn't help it. And yeah, I it was surprising that he felt it fairly quickly. But I wasn't that slow to follow, to be honest.
Now, look, I would be remiss not to bring up that certainly from a fan perspective, I think there's been certain perceptions about your relationship. People talk about the fact that it seemed like you would bring up things like you didn't want to kiss him or sleep in the same bed with him, and those were boundaries that he not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily was something he wanted to consent to. There were moments where he told you to watch your attitude, and I'm going to be with you outside the house, whether you like it or not. Which again, I think fans were sort of perceiving as domineering and controlling. What is your reaction to that?
Um, I think with the thing like kissing and stuff like that, it was more so, at least for me, founded in reasons that weren't necessarily that it was crossing a boundary.
Hmm.
I was just like thinking of having to watch me kiss somebody. Just I was like, I don't want to see that. But I was excited to kiss him. I was glad when I did. I would have been near him all the time, every day. If I could, I didn't want to bug other people in the house was the main issue as to why I didn't want to, sleep in the same bed as him most of the time. Or I didn't want them, rolling their eyes at us. I didn't want to feel like there was animosity towards the both of us and make his position or my position in the house more precarious. So that was mainly the concerns with things like that. And then the other stuff, that house is extremely emotional. And if I let myself get incredibly worked up, as I almost did multiple times, I probably would have flipped out on everyone in the house. So I genuinely probably did need someone like Riley to be like, okay, take a breath, calm down. Nothing's happening yet. And I think it actually did helped like center me a bit because
Mm.
I could feel myself spiraling multiple times in the house, just with stress and paranoia and anxieties and sometimes flipping out about it actually isn't the best thing. And I did have the room to do that as well a couple of times. So I think it was just specific instances, maybe just weren't seen the best, but I never felt uncomfortable or unhappy with anything.
Well, last thing I want to do is play a bit of a game with you,
Okay.
Catherine. Again, I know you've got some thoughts on the people left in the house, so I'm going to give you a name of someone who's currently in there, and you give me the first word or few words that come to
Oh gosh,
mind.
it's gonna be bad.
It'll be fun. It'll be a good time. Let's start with Ashley.
Spoiled.
Ava.
Lovable.
Keanu.
Silly.
How would you feel if I told you that he's the new HOH?
Oh my God. Happy. Good
how
job, Keanu.
how about Kelly?
Crazy in a good way.
Lauren.
Sweet.
Mickey.
Smart.
Morgan.
Mm, no idea.
Rachel.
Frustrating.
Vince.
Uh, Liar.
And finally, Will.
Tired.